All right, so you see here a quotation from Sigmund Freud. So you know Sigmund Freud, I'm sure you have heard about him. Sigmund Freud is the father of psychoanalysis. Well, he wasn't, Sigmund Freud was not a literary critic. He was only, I mean, he was, psychoanalysis is actually not a form, originally, psychoanalysis is not a form of literary criticism. It's a method to try to help people psychologically. It's a way to cure psychological and psychiatric diseases. So in this quotation, he says, "Where does a thought go when it's forgotten?" Well, according to Freud, it's never forgotten. So it just goes to your unconscious, but it's always there, and it always reminds you somehow in your daily speech, daily decisions, or in your dreams, wherever it is. So when I was preparing this presentation, I have used several books, in fact. So that's your course book. You know this book, Beginning Theory by Peter Berry. That's the second book that I have used, Teach Yourself, Literary Theory. So some of you know about this book because I have been handing this book, I have been lending this book to those who were preparing their presentations, but because of this corona disease, we had to cut our presentations. And the other book that I have used is actually this, the Bedford Glossary of Critical and Literature. So what you see in those presentations are actually not my words. So I did not write those, I did not prepare these slides, but I just adopted them, okay? So these are not my sentences. So let's start by talking about making an introduction to psychoanalytic theory, psychoanalytic criticism. Well, as I have previously mentioned, psychoanalytic theory or psychoanalysis, let's say, psychoanalysis is a real world and practical field of study, which is designed to treat mental health difficulties. So it's a kind of a therapy. But what kind of a therapy is that? It tries to help people by making a connection, or trying, as our writers say, by investigating the interaction of conscious and unconscious elements in the mind. So what is the conscious mind and what is the unconscious mind? I'm sure you all have your idea, so it won't be difficult for me to explain to you. So your conscious mind is, think of your mind as if it were a computer hard drive. So your conscious mind is what you see on the computer screen, okay? The game that you are playing or the Word document that you are typing, okay? So that's your conscious mind. But what about your unconscious mind? So what is it? What could be a similar analogy? Your unconscious mind would be what is deep in the hard drive, what is not seen on the screen. For example, an Excel file, which you are not actively using right now, or another game that's on your computer, but which you are not using right now. Or maybe a better explanation would be the files that you have deleted and which are in the recycle bin in your computer would be your unconscious mind. So it's there, but it's not on the surface. So that's your unconscious mind. So psychoanalysis tries to cure your health problems by trying to reach down to your unconscious mind and trying to explain how your thoughts in your unconscious mind affect your conscious mind, your present situation, okay? So we can say that the father of psychoanalytic theory was Sigmund Freud, the Austrian psychoanalyst. He was born in 1856 and died in 1939, and he was hugely influential in the 20th century thought, not only in psychoanalysis, but also his works have affected many other fields as well, such as literary criticism. Okay, yeah, Freud believed that forces in our unconscious drive us to behave in certain ways. We are unaware of these thoughts, but they direct how we feel and act. For example, a childhood trauma we experienced might affect how we decide about certain things when we're adults, okay? So you are unaware, or you have forgotten, you have repressed those thoughts, but they are there and they affect your decisions, your dreams, your choices. The individual represses many things which remain within the unconscious. So yeah, we repress those bad events, bad things, negative things, desires, or they could be positive things as well, desires, traumas and tensions that we do not acknowledge in everyday life because we have mentally pushed them into a place where we are not aware of them. For Freud, it is these unconscious feelings that determine our behavior. Okay, so we might consciously say something, we might consciously make a decision, we might, but these decisions are to some extent, according to Freud, these decisions are to some extent determined by those hidden desires or hidden traumas and tensions. Okay, I'm sure you know of these famous things: the ego, the superego, and the id. So your id, let's start with id actually, although it's the last one on the list. The id is your instincts. Think about a small child, think about a baby, let's say. A baby only acts upon its id, okay, because the id is your instincts, and the id actually desires instant satisfaction and instant gratification. If the baby is hungry, there is nothing else which is important for him, okay? So you have to feed it. The ego is one's conscious self, and the superego is the modifier of its desires, one's moral self. Okay, many of its impulses for Freud relate to our sexual desires. Yes, sexuality was a very important thing for Freud, and his ideas always revolve around sexuality and our hidden sexual desires. So the desire, he called this libido. The libido contributes to our desire to live, and he called it the eros drive. Eros, as you know, is the Greek god of love. The desire or libido contributes to our desire to live, away from our desire for death. Freud called it thanatos. Thanatos is the Greek god for death. Male power is related to this sexual desire, though through what Freud calls the phallus, his word for the penis as a symbol of the masculine drive to dominate and control. So there's a famous saying by Oscar Wilde, actually, although it's usually misattributed to Freud. So Oscar Wilde says, everything is related to sex except sex. Sex is about power. So it really fits this framework, which is made by Freud, actually. So male power is actually, according to Freud, is related to sexual desire and sexual power. And let's talk a little bit about phallus. So phallus is his word for penis. For example, in some of his writings, Freud said that when analyzing dreams, towers or tall buildings or pens or pencils, these things are actually related to the phallus, and it's usually these things are usually related to male psyche, male mindset. Okay, a central place is given in Freudian thought to dreams. Yes, okay, dreams, which are seen as the medium through which many of our repressed desires show themselves. So we sometimes have very strange dreams, and when we wake up, we just remember them, but we cannot make sense of them. So according to Freud, these dreams are actually kind of like a soup, let's say, where the ingredients are inside the soup, and they just manifest itself as a mixture of our hidden desires and hidden fantasies in our dreams. Why do we have these visions in our dreams? Because of our ego and superego. Why? Because these dreams, these sexual desires or instincts or fantasies are taboo for us during our conscious time, during our awake time. So that's why we have to let this steam go away. So in order to solve this problem, we just dream about these events, and they are always in a symbolic way. These fantasies are represented in a symbolic way in our dreams. Yeah, that's why a large amount of psychoanalytic therapy, therefore, is devoted to the discussion and interpretation of dreams. I'm sure you know about this one as well, the Oedipus complex. So Oedipus Rex was a Greek play. And in this play, Oedipus has unknowingly, of course, he unknowingly marries his mother. So at the center of Freud's concern for repressed sexual desires is his idea of the Oedipus complex. For Freud, this story is a reflection of a process in infant development. When boys are young, when men are young children, when they're boys, they must dissociate themselves from their fathers and claim their own place as an individual. But during this stage, before they prove their independence actually from their fathers, they have to go through this stage, according to Freud. And during this stage, they actually hate their fathers, and they are sexually attracted to their mothers. They put themselves in their father's position, actually, and they have sexual desires for their mothers. And so how do we see that in literature? In Hamlet, for example, here, this is a famous scene from Hamlet where Hamlet confronts his mother. His mother has married his mother has married Hamlet's uncle after her husband dies before the beginning of the play. So Hamlet actually is warned by the ghost of his father that he was killed by his brother, and so Hamlet must therefore kill his uncle, and his mother has married Hamlet's uncle. So it's a confusing story maybe for you, but probably you have read this one, so it's not confusing for you. But throughout the play, Hamlet hesitates all the time. So it takes, I mean, when people produce Hamlet on stage or in film, it usually it's almost never shorter than 3 hours or sometimes 4 hours. It's a very long play. In fact, I think it's Shakespeare's longest play. So for this longest time, for this very long time, Hamlet is unable to decide if the ghost is telling him the truth or if he should kill his uncle. So why is this hesitation? Well, according to psychoanalytic critics, it's because Hamlet has a sexual desire for his own mother. So he has not gotten rid of his Oedipus complex. According to Freud, most men get rid of their Oedipus complexes when they are out of their childhood, when they leave childhood. And but Hamlet has not, according to psychoanalytical critics. So Hamlet still has this Oedipus complex, and he famously throws, and as you see that in this picture from a movie, Hamlet throws his mother on bed, okay? And a bed actually symbolizes having sex in this context of Freudian interpretation. So Hamlet throws his mother on the bed, and this is a very critical scene for the psychoanalytical critics. And he cannot, as I was saying, he is unable to kill his uncle, and he is unable to make a decision because he has the same sexual desires as his uncle does. As his uncle is in love with Hamlet's mother, Hamlet is also in love with his own mother. Therefore, in Hamlet's eyes, his uncle is innocent. That's why he cannot kill his uncle. At least that's how psychoanalytical critics analyze the play. Okay, so you see here Leonardo DiCaprio and another guy. He is just an ordinary guy, by the way. There is no Photoshop on this painting, on the right side painting. On the left side, you have Leonardo DiCaprio, and on the right side, just a random guy. He is not a celebrity. So the doppelganger means the double in German. So Freud wrote his essays in the German language, and he came up with this concept called the doppelganger. The doppelganger is think about the concept of yin and yang, okay, in Oriental philosophy. Or think about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So in the morning, Dr. Jekyll is a respectable person, but at night, Mr. Jekyll appears, and he is just the opposite of him. So in one of his essays, this photograph that you see here is just a kind of a joke, okay? In one of his essays, Freud considers the uncanny nature of the double, a figure he had encountered in the work of his colleague, Otto Rank. Literature is full of examples of uncanny doubles, which play on the idea of the repressed. So this doppelganger is actually our repressed side, according to Freud, okay? For example, in Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So this one is probably most well known for us, for English philologists. So Mr. Hyde is sometimes read as Dr. Jekyll's repressed homosexuality, or Toni Morrison's Beloved features a ghost that is a double of a dead child, representing the repressed trauma of slavery. Things like that. Okay, so we usually have these doppelgangers or doubles, or let's call them our hidden and repressed sides, or twins, let's say, evil twins, let's say, in literature, in many works of literature. Another concept is unheimlich. Unheimlich is translated as uncanny into English. So again, the doppelganger is the German term and the double is the English version. Unheimlich is the original term by Freud in German, and uncanny is the English translation. So on the left side, you see, maybe you are familiar with this story. So the mother, the woman on the top photograph on the left side is actually a mother who has just lost her daughter, and this kid and this daughter and this child is actually a virtual girl. Let's say she is a computer generalized figure, so she is not real. The mother is real, but the daughter is not real. So she has lost her child, and she has sent her dead daughter's pictures and videos of her daughter to scientists, and they have created a computer imagery of her, and she's wearing a virtual reality headset on her eyes, and she's able to see her dead daughter, actually. But this is, I think, an example of unheimlich, because the uncanny, the unheimlich, is what is familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. So this, or let's think about those Japanese female human-like robots. So they look real, they look kind of real. I'm sure you have seen them on documentaries or films or news maybe. So a Japanese company comes up with a new female robot which actually smiles, speaks, winks, and things like that. So it looks like a woman, but at the same time, there is something strange about it. So when you look at these robots, or when you look at this computer imagery, this girl that you see here, you know that it looks like a real person, but at the same time, it is not. Okay, so that's called the uncanny, of something being. It doesn't have to be about a person, by the way. The uncanny doesn't have to be about a person. It could also be about a place as well. For example, in your dreams, sometimes you see your house, but some things are different in the house, and it makes you nervous. You walk on the streets in your neighborhood in your dreams, but the houses are somehow different. So you feel a certain kind of restlessness as a result. Okay, and that feeling is called uncanny. Okay, so not all of Freud's most influential theories relate explicitly to the sexual. In his essay, The Uncanny, Freud discusses his idea of what in German called unheimlich. This word translates literally as unhomely. And Freud plays on this notion to describe the sensation of something unsettling and yet familiar. So it has to be familiar, but at the same time it has to be unfamiliar, and therefore it's unsettling for you. It's restless. You don't feel comfortable. That which reminds us of home but troubles it. Okay, to consider easily your own experience of the uncanny, you might think about déjà vu, the feeling we sometimes get that we have experienced a certain event before. Such moments can be seen to capture the uncanny, the sense we have of something simultaneously intimate and disturbing. For Freud, these events are connected to our psychology because, I've lost my line, psychology, because they remind us unconsciously of our id. They store up in us things we have denied or repressed by reminding us that we are never really at home with ourselves. We are always on the edge of something threatening and disturbing. It's important to remember that the uncanny is not merely something that seems to us to be strange or unfamiliar. It's rather what is familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. The homely that is unhomely, we can say. Sorry. Okay. So what do Freudian critics do? So this part is from, I just copied it from your beginning theory book. So what do Freudian critics do? They give central importance. You can follow these things from your book as well. I mean, I've just prepared this presentation from the books. They give central importance in literary interpretation to the distinction between the conscious and the unconscious mind. They associate the literary, so this sentence is important. They associate the literary works overt means obvious, or open, or visible content with the former, and the covert content with the latter. So what does he mean? They associate the literary works overt content with the conscious mind, and the covert content with the unconscious mind. So whose conscious and unconscious mind is that? Is it the writer's unconscious mind and conscious mind, or is it the characters' conscious mind? Actually, it's usually both. Privileging the latter or privileging the second. So privileging the covert content, because why do they privilege the covert content? Because all the other literary criticisms actually are concerned with the overt content, okay, the obvious, the visible content. But the Freudian criticism or psychoanalytic criticism is interested in what goes on behind the mind, behind the text. So that's why they privilege the covert content. Hence, they pay close attention to unconscious motives and feelings, whether these be those of the author or those of the characters depicted in the work. So the overt motive of Hamlet might be revenge. Okay, so his uncle has killed his father and married his mother. That's why he is trying to kill him. But in his unconscious mind, his covert side, he is actually also in love with his mother. Okay, they demonstrate the presence in the literary work of classic psychoanalytic symptoms, conditions, or phases, such as the oral, anal, and phallic stages of emotional and sexual development in infants. They make large-scale applications of psychoanalytic concepts to literary history in general. I think that part is not really relevant for us. Maybe. Harold Bloom's book, The Anxiety of Influence, sees the struggle for identity by each generation of poets under the threat of greatness of its predecessors. Okay, so think of these literary periods or the generations of poets. They are usually influenced by the previous poets, but they also have this secret desire to be more successful, be more influential than the previous generation of poets. So they attribute, the psychoanalytical critics attribute these kinds of concerns of the poets or the writers to the Oedipus complex, the desire to overcome the father. They identify a psychic context for the literary work at the expense of social or historical context, privileging the individual psychodrama above the social drama of class conflict, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not really relevant for us. Okay, so Freud has been criticized extensively because his writings are actually not really scientific, because they usually depend on stuff like dreams, or Oedipus complex, things like that. These are just abstract concepts, and you cannot really prove them, right? Or you cannot really disprove them. They seem correct, but at the same time, there is no scientific method to examine them. You cannot make an experiment about the Oedipus complex, right? So that's why his writings have been found as unscientific, mostly. But actually, to some extent, they actually work. They seem like correct, but there's no way to scientifically analyze them. So one of the criticisms against Freud was that, for example, Oedipus. So some critics argue that Freudian preoccupation with Oedipus reduces everything to myth, dangerously limiting the possible analysis of the self. The consequences of this, they argue, are not simply the furthering of patriarchal ideologies, but also racism and the furtherance of capitalist hegemony. All right, so because Freud says that, says things like men are obsessed with sexual dominance, or boys have an Oedipus complex. It actually, it's like saying, this is the way the things are. This is a thing that we cannot change. Therefore, they say it reduces everything to myth. Okay, so there is no way to get over with those problems, according to this, according to Freud. So having an Oedipus complex is inevitable, things like that. So by saying that these things are inevitable, they believe that Freud is actually reinforcing patriarchy. He is reinforcing, they claim that Freud is reinforcing and supporting, of course, not directly, but indirectly supporting the dominance of men over women, okay? So that's one criticism. And the other one is that distrust of Freud has grown strongly since the 1980s, partly as a result of his mainly negative views on women, as seen in the notion that women's sexuality is based upon feelings of narcissism, masochism, and passivity, and the idea that they suffer from an innate form of inferiority complex known as penis envy. So according to Freud, women are sexually passive, and they secretly are jealous of men because they lack the penis. So penis, according to Freud, is a symbol of power. And since women don't have that, don't have the phallus, they have a thing called the penis envy. Okay, so that's one thing that the feminist critics usually criticize Freud about. Okay, Jungian psychoanalysis. So Carl Jung was a Swiss psychoanalyst, and he was, of course, he had read Freud's work, and he was influenced by it, but he tried to put more ideas into psychoanalytic theory. His main thing was this thing called the collective unconscious. Maybe we have discussed this term in one of our classes as well. So Jung suggests that there exists what he calls a collective unconscious, ideas and impulses inherited from our ancestors. While Freudian work stresses sexual impulses, Jungian approaches instead focus on this inherited unconscious. Sexuality thus becomes only one element in a much more complicated picture. So, how to talk about collective unconscious? For example, why are we afraid of, or why are we afraid of spiders, but why are we not afraid of cats, for example? Or things like, because spiders or insects, they remind us of dirty places, okay? And dirty places remind us of sickness, disease. And this idea is actually, according to Jung, this idea that insects are dangerous for us is an inheritance from our ancestors. Or sometimes, yeah, things like that. I couldn't come up with another example, actually. I forgot about, I had one, but I forgot about, maybe I can remember it later. Okay, and another term that Jung came up with or popularized was archetype. So you have, I think, heard about this word, archetype. Jung used the word archetype to describe the myths and images that reside in our unconscious. These are inherited and shape our understanding of the world. For example, the archetypal image of the mother suggests fertility, wisdom, comfort. Any other archetypes? Can we come up with other types of examples of archetypes? In many folk tales, folkloric tales, or epics, or in those stories that our grandmothers have told us, there are some archetypal persons, such as the old wise woman, or the old witch woman, or the knight, things like that, or innocent girl, things like that. These are all archetypes, according to Jung. And we have these archetypal characters in our dreams as well. Therefore, sorry, not in our dreams. I said the wrong thing. So not in our dreams, but in our collective unconscious, we have these archetypal ideas. For example, in times of trouble, people or communities look for a knight in shining armor who will save them from this problem. Okay, in literary criticism, the idea of the archetype is used to explain the key motives, the hero, the villain, that define the nature of a literary work. Okay. Yes, Electra complex. I think you know about this one too. So the Electra complex is the alternative to Freud's Oedipus complex. And Electra complex, the idea of Electra complex actually belongs to Jung. So in this version of the story, again, Electra is a mythological character, and Electra, according to Electra complex, the girl child initially, which means at the start, identifies with the mother, but rejects this association when she realizes she has no penis. Driven by penis envy, she then attaches to her father and positions herself in competition with her mother. Okay, so in this stage, according to Jung, the girl child is in a competition. They fight all the time with their mothers in order to attract the attention of their fathers. So again, these things, sorry. So again, these things are not really things like collective unconscious or Oedipus complex or Electra complex. These things are not really provable. You cannot really make an experiment and prove them to exist, but you can actually observe them in society. So that's why psychoanalysis is sometimes not seen as unscientific. Okay. Okay, Lacanian psychoanalysis. So we have Freud, we have Jung, and we have Lacan. So Lacan is also a French psychoanalyst, and he is useful for literary studies because he sees the human mind as structured much like a language. He was very influenced by the structuralist movement, and in particular, he takes up two key aspects of that movement. First, the idea that language is structured around the notion of difference, which means that, so this is kind of unknown territory for you, I know, and it's quite difficult for me to explain to you in an online presentation, actually. But the structuralists actually are also another critical literary, at a school of literary criticism. They are called the structuralists, and they claim that there is they have this idea that language is structured around the notion of difference. We call a mouse because it's not a house, which seems silly, but at the same time, which is correct. It means that there is no reason that a mouse is called a mouse. Okay. And secondly, the idea that the relationship between the signifier and the signified is always arbitrary and has no inherent meaning or logic. So we call this a mouse because not because it looks like the sound when you mouse, or you call this a book not because this the word book looks like this book. Okay, so they have, okay, I know it's very complicated. These are the two ideas of structures, but how is psychoanalysis related to that? For Lacan, the unconscious operates in the same way. It makes random connections between symbols and experiences and makes meaning through oppositions. So when a tree, for example, a tree or a cat or a dog might mean something for you in a dream or in your unconscious mind, but something else for another person. So there is no single dream interpretation, let's say. Okay, So on the internet, you see those dream interpretation websites. Okay, I saw a dog chasing me in my dream. What does it mean? Well, according to Lacanian psychoanalysts, it might mean anything. It depends on you. There is no single interpretation for it. A dog chasing you might mean something to you, but the same dream would mean something else for this other person. Okay, another thing about Lacanian psychoanalysis analysis is the mirror stage, the idea of mirror stage. So again, it's related to the development of the child, just like the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex. So he argues that children exist originally in a state where they have no sense of self. When the child is first born, according to Lacan, the child, the baby, the newborn baby, does not think of itself as a person. That's what he means. This he describes as the imaginary. It's a state lasting until around 6 months of age, in which the child cannot distinguish between itself and the rest of the world or other people, looking only to the mother, which it idealizes. This then is followed by the mirror stage, so-called because it describes the moment when a child first looks in the mirror and, according to Lacan, sees themselves for the first time as a separate person through their awareness of their own unique and distinct reflection. The child is now present in the world, and particularly in the linguistic world. So they find themselves, like everyone, trying to grasp the essence of things, but limited by language. Okay, so according to Lacan, there are 2 stages. So in the imaginary stage, the child doesn't understand that it is an independent person. But in the mirror stage, the child, again, symbolically, it doesn't have to look, the child doesn't have to look in the mirror really. So the child actually realizes that he or she is a separate entity from the world. Okay. I took this one from your book as well. Okay, so there is a famous Canadian writer, L.M. Montgomery, and there is a very famous book that was written by so Anne of the Green Gables, probably you have seen, and there is a TV show on Netflix as well, Anne with an E. So that's the same book that this TV show on Netflix is about. So Anne has a very Lacanian experience. Confronted by her reflection, so Anne in the book is a very imaginative girl. She imagines that she is somebody else all the time. She sees a beautiful woman and she thinks that she is that woman, or she is always so happy. She is always hysterical. She's hysterically happy. She's very emotional. She writes poems, things like that. Anyway, so in this scene in the book, Anne has a very Lacanian experience. Confronted by her reflection, she is forced to abandon the fantasy she has constructed and to see herself as unique. I can see my reflection in that splendid big mirror hanging on the wall. I am tall and regal, clad in a gown of trailing white lace, with a pearl cross on my breast and pearls in my hair. My hair is of midnight darkness and my skin is clear ivory pallor. My name is the Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. Okay, so this part is actually her imagination. She goes in front of the mirror and imagines that she is some very beautiful and rich woman. So this is her fantasy. But then she realizes that she is somebody else because she is in front of the mirror. No, it isn't. I can't make that seem real. She then stepped to the little looking glass and peered into it. Her pointed freckled face and solemn gray eyes peered back at her. So now she realizes that she is a separate person. You are only Anne of Green Gables, she said earnestly, and I see you, just as you are looking now, whenever I try to imagine I'm Lady Cordelia. What Lacanian critics do? Okay, we had this one for the Freudian critics as well. Like Freudian critics, they pay close attention to unconscious motives and feelings, but instead of excavating for those of the author or characters, they search out those of the text itself, uncovering contradictory undercurrents of meaning, which lie like a subconscious beneath the conscious of text. So Freudian critics take the writers, but usually the characters in their focus. But the Lacanian critics take the text itself into their focus. Okay, that they demonstrate the presence in the literary work of Lacanian psychoanalytic symptoms or phases, such as the mirror stage or the sovereignty of the unconscious, just like the example before about Anne of the Green Gables. So they look at the characters and try to determine whether those characters are living through those stages, the mirror stage, things like that. Okay, these two are enough, I think. You can read the rest if you're interested, really. Okay, so let's make a summary of the ideas, key ideas. So the unconscious is the part of the mind of which the individual is unaware, but which drives their desires and behaviors. So yeah, like I've said, we have our desires and we make our decisions in partly being influenced by our unconscious desires. The ego, superego, and the id, you know all of these. The Oedipus complex is the process of male child development in which the child identifies himself in competition with the father for the attention of his mother. The Electra complex is the opposite of that. The mirror stage is the point at which the child comes to recognize itself as a separate person. Okay. Repression is the we did not talk about repression and sublimation and dream work, the last three actually in the presentation, but I added them here as key ideas. Anyway, repression is the forgetting or ignoring of unresolved conflicts, unadmitted desires, or traumatic past events, so that they are forced out of conscious awareness and into the realm of the unconscious. Okay, so we sometimes repress a bad memory and we just forget about them. Okay, so they are so deeply buried in our unconscious that they are called repressed. Okay. Sublimation is the promotion of the repressed material into something grander or disguised as something noble. Imagine that a person has a very shameful sexual attraction. Okay, like maybe he is sexually attracted to animals, a terrible thing. Okay, so this person actually represses it at first. Think about the previous stage. This person represses it and then he sublimates it. He promotes his love for animals into an absurd situation. Think about a person who is attracted to animals, but in real life, he actually really likes animals. He feeds them, he pets them, okay? So this is like sublimation. It doesn't mean that everyone who loves animals, who feeds them on the street or pets them on the street is actually sublimating something, but it could be the situation with those kind of sexual deviations, problems, okay? Sublimation is promoting of the repressed material into something grander or disguised as something noble. Dream work is the process by which real events or desires are transformed into dream images. So we said that Freud was very much interested in dreams. So dream work is actually an umbrella term here, and it has two sub terms beneath it: displacement and condensation. Displacement, again, these terms, displacement and condensation, are about the dreams. Displacement is one person or event is represented by another, which is in some way linked or associated with it. I think we have read this story last semester with you. Where are you going? Where have you been? In that story, Connie, the main girl in the story, we said that it could be that she was having a dream, and Arnold Friend in the dream, or sorry, Arnold Friend, who went at the end of the story, arrives in the car, but he walks funnily, you remember? It looks like Arnold Friend has something in his shoes. His face looks strange. He has an uncanny appearance. It looks like he is older, much older than he looks. We said that, and we also said that Arnold Friend doesn't use violence, but he uses manipulation. He uses words, he lies, things like that. We said that Arnold Friend might be, in that story, Arnold Friend might be might be Satan, and that it might be that Connie is just having a dream. So this is an example of displacement. So one person or event is represented, in this case, Satan is represented by another, which is in some way linked or associated with it. So Satan is represented by Arnold Friend. And remember that Freud was also interested in slip of tongues as well, or word plays. For example, I remember saying that Arnold Friend's name, the surname Friend, when you omit the letter R, it becomes fiend, which means devil. Okay? Condensation. Several people, events, or meanings are combined and represented by a single image in the dream. So several people, events, or meanings are combined and represented by a single image. Okay, so imagine that you are having a dream where your family, your whole family, your uncles, your sister, your parents, your grandparents, they are all represented by one person in your dream, okay? Or your whole class, your friends from critical theory class, they are all represented by one person in your dream. So that's called condensation. So if you go through beginning theory, actually you will see many good examples about these terms as well. Okay, so let's finish with an example. There is this story called The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. I'm not sure if you have read them in any of your classes. I didn't teach that story to you. It's actually a novella, a short novel, not a story, but a short novel. So what happens in the story? In the story, there is a governess. I mean, let me read it. Let me read the summary to you. The novella tells of the experiences of a young governess who goes to care for two young children, but becomes convinced that forces of evil are at work in their lives. So she is just seeing ghosts, and especially she sees the ghosts of one woman and one man. But nobody sees those ghosts apart from her. She's a governess, which means that she is like a teacher who is at home all the time. She's like a nanny, but at the same time, she's a teacher to children in the house. When the governess learns that her predecessor had a relationship with another employee, Peter Quint, she becomes convinced that it is the ghost of these two individuals who haunt the children. At the end of the novella, the governess confronts the little girl who denies seeing any ghost. In a dramatic final scene, The governess attempts to prevent the young boy from seeing a ghost she sees at the window. Holding him tightly, he dies in her arms. We never know whether the ghosts are real. Okay, so what is uncanny about this story? So this governess sees ghosts. She cannot be sure that they are ghosts because they don't look like Casper, but they look like real people, okay? And nobody else sees them. So how is this related to the uncanny? So psychoanalytic readings have focused on the sexual imagery in the novella and the governess's preoccupation with the sexual fortunes of her predecessors. Yeah, so as I have said in the, as we have read in the summary of the turn of the screw. So her predecessor, I mean, the governess before the main character has actually, there was another female governess before her, and she had a lover. She had a secret lover. The ghosts in this context are not real, but rather a psychosis induced by her repressed sexuality. Their presence is uncanny. By there he means the ghosts. The presence of the ghosts is uncanny because they come to the governess not in monstrous form, but as ordinary human figures. And their identity as ghosts thus rests upon the governess's sense of anxiety and unease in the wake of something seemingly normal. So in accordance with Freud's theory, what is really unsettled here is the governess's own sense of self, and her repressed sexuality is awoken by these figures. So these ghosts are, according to Freudian criticism, according to psychoanalytical criticism, these ghosts are symbols of her own desire to have a sexual relationship with a man. Therefore, that's why she sees these ghosts. The suggestion is that what the governess sees is nothing but her own sexual repressions turns this into the strange and unusual. So this was a very basic literary example for an application of the psychoanalytical theory into a work of literature. I'm sure when you search the internet, I'm sure you can come up with many other ideas as well. So that's all I want to tell you about psychoanalytical criticism.